see you. Okay, I can't see you at the moment, but hopefully I will see you towards the end of the session. Okay, so let's start with, let me share my screen. And, Hocam, you need to enable my screen sharing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did click on the
now I can.
co-hosting.
Yes, okay. All right. Oops. Sorry for that. Now I'm going to share. First, I want to show this nice invitation that Melike Hocam designed, especially for this session. Thank you very much, Hocam. It looks beautiful, so I wanted to share it. You've already seen it, but not with my feelings. And now we're going to look at a few questions, but it's not going to be a normal question and answer part of thing. We're going to use Padlet. So here it is. And before I do that, let me just, sorry. This is the only way I could find the chat box. So here we have a clickable link in the chat box. I hope you can all see it. And you will, let me share my screen again. There you go. It's the screen, and here on the right-hand corner, you have a pencil, and when you click on it, you can write on the wall. Now we've got two questions for you. The first one is, how would you complete the sentence, a story can? And the second one, why do you think the title of the session is A Story Can? Okay. All right. Just a few words, a few sentences of what you're thinking. That would be enough if you're there. You click on this red circle.
Which they're quite familiar with Padlet.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. They don't want to write? Okay. I think so. In the morning session, we did a similar thing. And let me show you that actually. And they talked about how...
if I can, I don't want to interrupt you, but I also clicked on the link, but the pen or pencil doesn't appear. So I think there's something that you need to fix in the setting, like those 3 dots on the right upper hand. Right? So you get to choose something. It happened to me, so I know very well the situation. So if you click on that, as the person who sent the link to us, I think that would resolve the situation. Is that the case for everybody else? I can't see the marker, so I can't type anything.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know, so I'll not spend time with this. Okay.
Can you click on the 3 dots on the right-hand side? Yeah.
Yes.
No. The what is it called? Right next to
this one.
Yeah. That. And then down, and hold on a second. Require approval. How did I? Can you go a little up?
Wallpaper, address, access, story can. I mean, because
posting. Just hold it. Display.
Okay.
No comments. Comments. Allow reviewer comment on the post. Just click on make everything available, and let me double check on this link so I can see if it makes any changes.
Okay. So I'll copy to clipboard again. I can only see the chat box like this, so
yeah, something is up with this one. Maybe yeah.
It's the same probably.
Let me click on this one and see what happens. No, it's still the same. It happened to me before.
Okay.
I clicked on one thing and then it quickly resolved the issue, but I can't recall what it was exactly. But it worked very perfectly in the earlier session, the Padlet activity.
Okay. Well, actually, we just, talked about how stories are inspiring, or how they change lives, or they can make things memorable, increase imagination, attention of the students, etc. We talked about that. Well, time is quite limited, so I'm sorry for that. This one worked. I don't know why that one worked, because the settings were the same in the first place. Okay, so, okay, sorry. Now let me go on with the, yes, there we go. All right, okay. Let it read all the slides. Okay, so here we go. We talked about our questions. We didn't, but you know, we went over them. And okay, now here we start with, throughout the session, I'm going to do a few storytelling, story reading, etc. So this is the first one. It's about a man named Switzerland. You know how green and lovely Switzerland is. And this is George's best friend. I don't know his name, but let's call him Max. George and Max, it was a perfect day. So George wanted to take Max on a walk. So they started walking in the mountains. And after about an hour, they noticed, because they walked in the bushes and everything, lots of trees around, plants and bushes, they noticed that they had birds all around. So these are birds, you know, they stick on everything. And the poor little doggy, Max, had birds all around him. And George had birds on his trousers as well. He was wearing woolen trousers, and all the birds got stuck on his trousers. He tried to pull them off, but they were so strong, and they were, you know, it makes you hurt as well. Like the dog was making sounds because it was quite hurtful, and he couldn't take them off his trousers. But he was, you know, he was a scientist, and he was curious. Okay, how come these birds cling on my doggy's fur and on my trousers and don't come off easily? So what's the trick in this? So when he analyzed under a microscope, he saw that the birds had tiny hooks on them, and they clung to the soft material, fabric or fur, and did not let go. So as a scientist, he goes, what can I do with this? And then after some research, after some experiments, he came up with Velcro, you know, the jacked things. Yes, okay. So on this side, he created hooks, and on this side, it's a soft fabric. So in a microscopic view, this is it. And George de Mestral was the inventor of Velcro, giving the name Velcro, with made up of two French words, velvet and crochet, meaning hook. So velvet and hook made the famous Velcro. Of course, it was not very popular in 1948 or the following years. It became popular when NASA wanted to use it in on the spacesuits of the astronauts. And since then, it's been a billion-dollar market for Velcro, because it's a patented product. Okay. So that was a story. I could have just said Velcro was invented by George, what was his name? He's got a different name, George de Mestral in 1948. But instead, I told the story of how he actually found it. Okay. So why do we tell stories, and in real life or in the classroom? Can you just share a few ideas in the chat box by writing a few words. Why do we tell stories in real life or in the classroom? Why do you think we tell stories? To enjoy, okay, yeah. To have an idea, okay, sure. It makes us, yes, to remember, very good, okay. Attract attention, yes. Attention of students, okay. To escape from real life, okay. So, funny learning environment, okay. So you think stories take the attention of students, make it fun, shortcut of giving a message. Wow, okay, that's a fantastic idea. All right. So why do you think stories are attractive? Then that brings up the second question, right? So you say to take attention, but why does it attract people then? What's so special about it? So you can think about that, and while I'll carry on. Okay. Basically, very basically, research shows that information learned through a story is more memorable, okay? Because it provides a context. And when you provide a context, what does the brain do? The brain actually connects information and stores it in relative nice places. And in the end, it becomes memorable. Instead of isolated, Velcro was invented by George in 1948, kind of isolated information. It's wrapped up in a story about his dog and the birds and how it hurt. And it was a sunny day. They walked in Switzerland, sunny, beautiful mountain, etc. So it becomes more memorable for you to remember that information. Okay. Now, what is it that stories that, you know, why does it attract attention, or why does it make things fun or memorable? Because it acts as mnemonic devices for facts, meaning it helps us brain remember the information, okay? So it puts it in a frame and packages it like that, so, and it's easy to remember. And it engages our emotions. Yes, we get happy, we're sad, we're excited, we're nervous. Sorry. And stories make us use our brains differently. We're going to say a few words about this at the end, but it does something to our brains, and we use different parts of it, and we'll leave that to the end. Okay. All right. So how can stories help learning then? Now we said, okay, memorable. Okay. So what else do you think stories are good for in terms of learning? Can you write a few words again in the chat box, please? How can they help us? How can they help our students in learning English, actually? Let me make it more specific. Okay, yes, definitely formulate expressions like you can learn it with chunks, can't you? Like make up your mind, or nice expressions like go into something or take off your clothes, okay? Or they can just grab the sentences with the context and with the tense without, learn about each other culture, true. Some moral values, definitely. Expands creativity, yes. Familiarity and trust, exactly, because it warms up, true. Okay. Students empathize with the characters, yes, a very good answer. All right, so it helps with motivation, right? Students are motivated to hear about stories. since the beginning of history, I think. Vocabulary acquisition, yes, stories give us a chance to put words in a context and come across with them enough times to internalize them. When you read stories, you can see a word many times in different contexts, and then your brain will actually acquire the word. Definitely. Literacy development, yes, it helps them in their reading and understanding, of course. It also helps with their phonological awareness, the sounds, how you pronounce it, where do you raise your voice, where do you make it lower, where do you chop the sound, or where do you, how do you ask a question with your voice, etc. Again, just like you said, social development, they learn about themselves as well as their friends in the stories. And of course, listening skills and strategies. If you just throw in a few questions as well while they're listening, they can develop their listening skills and strategies with stories. Okay. All right, so after saying all this, I'm going these parts a bit quick. Why? Because I know you've been studying about stories with Melike Ünal for the past couple of weeks, I think. So just to make you focus on some certain elements, because at the end, I'm going to read a story and then we're going to talk about the story with these points in mind. Okay, so what makes a story good? Any ideas? What makes a story good? What is a good story? What should it have?
Illustrations, pictures.
Okay, definitely, especially with young learners. Any other? Okay, let's carry on. Okay, elements of a good story. Now, a story should appeal to senses and engage the reader or the listener emotionally. Now, the world is out there, and how do we internalize? How do we put the world in us? By our senses. Yes, we see the world, we hear the world, we touch the world, we taste the world, we hear it, we feel it, etc. So we internalize everything with our five senses. Our five senses are the only means that help us connect with the world around us. So, and in a one given moment in real world, we are exposed to approximately 2 million information in one moment. So our senses are always active. And in a story, if you can appeal to more than 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 senses, then it is highly probable that you are creating a real life experience in that person. What do I mean? This is what I mean. At the beginning of the 20th century, William Carlos Williams, actually there was this new genre called imagism, and they wrote poetry with clear, simple words, sentences, and lots of images in it. The red wheelbarrow is one of the first icons of this imagism, and Williams is one of the first poets to appeal to this. And this is from a book published in 1923, Spring and All. So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rainwater beside the white chickens. Now, only a few words, a very short poem, but when you read this poem, you imagine a field, a farm with a red wheelbarrow and white chickens next to it. it's just rained and everything is clean and fresh after the rain, and probably a smell of soil and hard work of people using the red wheelbarrow, you know, digging, planting, harvesting, etc. Lots of hard work, effort, lots of sweat, and the beauty of nature, the green, the productivity, you know, the abundance and everything. So in just 4 sentences, he gave us the picture and the feelings. So stories, even they're only written in words and we can only read them, seems as if we are using only our ears, our hearing sense, or our eyes. We actually use more depending on how you use the words. That's why selecting books are extremely important. And what's best is actually one size does not fit all. Everyone is free in their imagination. I can think of a very green farm in summer, or maybe you can think of an autumn farm with lots of leaves around and the smell of fallen leaves around. So yes, it's totally up to the listener in their dreams. So yes, if it appeals to senses and emotions, that means it's a good poem, maybe, okay, but it is a good story. Okay. The second one, it should prompt curiosity about, you know, the characters. Oh, okay, what's going to happen now? What's next? So curiosity. And the third one, stories usually have a beginning, middle, and an end. So you start, you create the peak, and then you resolve everything. Tension is another element of a good story. However, with young learners, of course, we always need to be careful about tension because the level of tension is very important. Why? Because, for example, health and sickness, or like security and fear or sadness, if it's too much, we can actually traumatize the students. I once had I met an English teacher. He was writing stories for kids, very young learners. And he said, could you please read one of the stories and, you know, help me with editing? And I said, of course. Okay, it was nice. It was about a mouse and a snake, and they were friends, and they went on an adventure together. Everything's perfect, friendship, lovely atmosphere. But in the end, the snake ate the mouse. So a friend ate another friend. The moral of the story was actually that animals cannot resist their nature, but that was a bit too harsh for young learners, like eating a friend. Come on, this is a bit too much for them. So the tension, the level of tension is extremely important. There is one important thing I want to mention here. If I say, don't think of a purple elephant, your brain would think of the purple elephant first and then cancel that image. Instead of saying, don't do something, the brain is happier when it receives the command in a positive way, like think of a green elephant, walk, whisper, please remain quiet. Instead of saying, don't run, don't talk, don't think of this. And when you put something in the brain of a child that is not existing there already, you make them start thinking. For example, this maybe a child does not have any notion of losing a parent, But if you talk about a story whose, you know, a girl's parents are dead or etc., then they could start feeling fear, like say, oh, is my mom going to die as well, kind of. So please be careful when selecting stories. The tension or the main moral or even the simplest word can affect them negatively. Repeated language patterns are very useful for young learners in terms of learning chunks. And like in the story of Grandma, what big ears you've got, all the better to hear you with. And it repeats the same thing throughout the story. Okay. So in a classic narrative, we have a setting and the characters, and then we've got a tension, a sweet tension, and a conflict, and we've got a climax and resolution and a new normal in the end. Life goes on in the new way. Okay. Now, we can make a story, our storytelling experience, a bit more effective by, of course, for example, that's one of actually the good techniques, like, okay, rewrite the end of the story or retell the end of the story. They can end it the way they like. It's actually a quite effective technique. For storytelling to be useful for learning and development, after a while, you get to learn, you get to know your students and you know what they like, what they're interested in. So choosing a topic they like can actually help with the success of the storytelling. Interaction. When they are involved in the story, by saying a few words, acting out the movements, or singing the songs, or pointing to the picture, they feel more involved. Describe illustrations. Now, of course, especially with second language learning in young learners, they won't know all the words, which is normal. I prefer reading authentic storybooks, not graded readers. But I carefully choose the content of the authentic books, actually. Those are the real storybooks out in the world, prepared for native English kids, English-speaking kids. So they would not know each and every word. So when you talk about the pictures or show the pictures, they will not get lost and they will carry on understanding the story. And from time to time, when you stop and link the story with what they know, what they have seen, or their life experiences, would make it more meaningful for them. Oh, look, there's a lion in the story. And last week, do you remember we went to the zoo and we saw a big lion? Do you remember that? And they would associate the experiences with each other. Okay, yes. Now, metaphors. Now, in literature, we have metaphors, but in NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, meaning language, brain, the thoughts, and the body being connected. It's a bunch of techniques used to help with thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And the metaphors in NLP is actually a story. Now, why am I telling you this? Because not only from an NLP perspective, stories are metaphors in the NLP sense, meaning while you're telling the story, the conscious mind is engaged and the moral or the motto or the meaning of the story is buried into the subconscious. So stories are extremely powerful with subliminal messages. So you engage the conscious mind with the story of George and his dog going on a walk in the mountains, And then you give the 1948 Velcro invention in Switzerland with the subliminal message, okay? That's why stories can be very beneficial, useful, helpful, but it can also harm not just the kids, but even grown-ups. So stories are very, very, very important. Okay. Now here we've got a link. I will share this link with Melike Hocam, and you can watch it later on. It's a TED speech. A scientist has done a research. What happens when you talk or read, and what happens to your brain, and what happens to the audience's brain. He has carried out a research on that, and what he has found. Now, let's say you are running, and when you're actually running, some specific part is activated in your brain. When you're talking about this experience, the same part is activated again, as if you are running. And when you talk about this to someone, you share that same activated point to the listener. So, stories not just give you a real life experience, but also help you share that experience with your listeners or the audience you're talking to. So again, storytelling is extremely effective in terms of what it does to the brain. Subliminal messaging, mirroring the brain activity onto the participants. Okay, so now I've got a story. Are you ready for the story? The name of the story is Splat the Cat. There you are. Okay. I'll just move this aside. Okay. The illustrations are extremely detailed. If you can look carefully, you would see, and I'll point from time to time. It was early in the morning, and Splat was wide awake. Today was his first day at cat school, and his tail wiggled wildly with worry. So this is Splat. These are his eyes wide open. See, he's wearing cat slippers, and he's got a fish-shaped coffee table, and his feet are out of his bed. If I hide from the day, maybe it'll go away, he thought. It didn't go away. Time to get up, said his mum. Oh. Time to get dressed, said his mum. I don't have any clean socks, Mum. Maybe I should go to school tomorrow instead, said Splat. You don't wear socks, said his mum. I'm having a bad hair day, Mum. Maybe I should go to school tomorrow instead, said Splat. His mum combed his hair. Perfect, she said. Look at him. Don't forget your lunchbox, said his mum. I'll need a friend today, thought Splat. And he dropped his pet mouse Seymour into his lunchbox. Time to go, said his mum. The front door won't let me out, Mum. The gate won't let go of my fingers, Mum. The lamppost won't get out of my way, Mum. Mum. You can ride your bike if you like, Splat, said his mum. So he did, but he didn't say a single word. Welcome to cat school, said a big round cat. I'm Mrs. Wimpy Dimple, your teacher. Splat's mum gave him a hug. I'll be back soon, she said. You'll be fine. Everyone, this is Splat. Let's welcome him into our class, said Mrs. Wimpy Dimple. Hi, Splat. Look at them. Mrs. Wimpy Dimple began. Cats are amazing, she said. We're clever, cunning, and quick. Am I amazing too? Asked Splat. Yes, you too, said Mrs. Wimpy Dimple. Cats climb trees, drink milk, and chase mice, she continued. Why do we chase mice? Asked Splat. It's what we do, replied Mrs. Wimpy Dimple. Why? Asked Splat. Because. Why? Mrs. Wimpy Dimple sighed. Lunchtime, she announced. Splat opened his lunchbox. Mouse! The cats did what cats do. Seymour hid behind a glass bottle, and when the cat saw his face through the glass, they screamed, ah, and ran away. Seymour did what all mice want to do. Ooh, scare the cats. Stop, cried Splat. Splat. They didn't stop. Enough, Mrs. Wimpy Dimple said, and it ended. It's milk time. Hooray! But the door to the milk cupboard was stuck. No milk today, announced Mrs. Wimpy Dimple. Aww. Splat whispered into Seymour's ear. Seymour nodded, and then, a moment later, the door swung open. Yum! Mrs. Wimpy Dimple wrote again on the chalkboard. Cats don't chase mice. Hooray! Cheered the class. Soon it was home time. Splat's mum returned and gave him a hug. I've got lots of friends. Cats don't chase mice. I'm amazing. It was early the next morning, and Splat was wide awake. Today was his second day at cat school, and his tail wiggled wildly with excitement. Okay, so that's the end of the story. And so now we listened to Splat the Cat, the Red Wheelbarrow, and the story of Velcro. I'll enlarge this. I'll make it like so I can see you. Okay. And we talked about the elements of a good story, what should we do to make it more effective, etc. So if we consider this as a checklist, do you think these stories appealed to the senses and engaged you emotionally? Were you curious? Do you think they had a clear beginning, middle, and end? Did it have tension? Were there any repeated language patterns? Do you think it was enough to motivate and help with language vocab acquisition, literacy development, phonological awareness, social development and imagination, listening skills and strategies, and metaphor? I would love to hear okay, I'll make it like this. I'll share it again as like this. So I will be able to see you all. Okay. And meanwhile, you can start. So I'll go to the checklist part. Yeah, yeah, all right. And now I'll put on the chat. Yes, okay. Tension when the mice is chasing. Yes, okay. We've got a tension there. Okay, but it's a sweet tension, isn't it? Okay. Kids would not have a nightmare because of that. Yes, okay. So do you think these stories or the poem or the, you know, the Velcro story, if you like, you don't have to add the poem, but especially Splat the Cat and the Velcro story, do you think had all these? What do you think? Were they good stories in terms of senses, emotions, curiosity, structure? Oh, yes, okay.
If you like, you could use your microphones as well instead of using the chat box. They usually prefer the chat box, but just so I just let you know, you could talk to our guest speaker as well.
Definitely.
But if you feel more comfortable, yeah, with the chat box, that's fine too. So what do you think? What elements? So Hocam, Lis Hocam has gone through different elements that would make the stories a good one or an effective one, the whole story session. So which elements did you catch as you listened to the Splat the Cat story, let's say, the last one that they could probably remember better because we just read it? Any reactions from you?
Oh, reactions.
Any comments, Hocam, Suendan Hocam, anybody else?
Yeah, I would like to just raise my hand and then talk, but I cannot achieve it. But thank you very much. And yes, there's an overlap of the items that you have already told us about, and the stories. Everything goes well, and it always we try to catch up with the what will happen next, and nice. And listening skills, phonological awareness, literacy, and the curiosity, everything. Yes, as far as I see here, everything is there. Thank you.
Thank you, Suendan Hocam. Hocam, Feyza is raising a hand.
I can't see the hands, by the way.
Oh, you don't? Okay, let me facilitate it for you then. Feyza.
Hi, Hocam. Thank you for telling us a story, and I think I really like the flow of the story, and beginning of the story is like we can really relate ourselves. It's a bad hair day, I don't want to go to school, and etc. And I think social development and motivation is some of the contexts that are included in the story, like am I amazing too, or the questioning that the cats have, are we cats don't chase mice, etc. We see the changes throughout the story, and at the end it also concluded in a good way. I think these are all included, and yeah, that's all.
Thank you so much, Feyza. Ecem Nur is also raising a hand. Ecem?
I saw in the storybook in a motivation, because kids can easily emphasize, especially if they are in kindergarten to start the school, such as, I will have lots of friends in the school, I will have milk time, lunch time in the school, for example.
So almost converting the negative to positive. So the negative attitude, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to leave my comfy, bed and get dressed and, go and take maybe a ride to go to school. So all of those negative emotions and associations with the school and going to school completely changed. And we could definitely see that change, that major change at the end of the story, where he was saying, well, I'm amazing. And then, cats don't chase mice. And one other thing that I can recall, but all were positive, feelings and statements of positivity rather than, negative associations. So he completely changed throughout the story, right? So Helin also is raising a hand. Helin?
Hocam, actually, I want to ask something. How can we adapt this story for a disabled student?
Which disability do you have in mind?
Like deaf kid, deaf student, or autistic student?
Okay.
Learning disabilities or visually impaired. Visually impaired,
Visually impaired people actually can rely on, their hearing quite well. So when you play with your voice, when you give the drama, the intonation, the excitement, or the sadness, or the worry with your voice, or the nervousness, then they can actually hear you. And it's again the same when you speak to someone with specific activations in your brain, they get that as well, even if they just can hear. But with other disabilities like learning, but actually that's a very different topic, and that means, what part, what is the real reason. So you need to identify the real cause of that, and then you need to adapt it. So without knowing the specific details of, I also worked with different disability, people who have different disabilities. So, but you really need to know how they would get it, which senses would appeal most to them. Would it be feeling? Maybe you can provide soft fur in their hands while you're telling the story, so that they can actually feel splat, or they can feel the mice, or they can talk about what school means for them, because this is based on conventional schools. Like, you go to school, you've got a classroom, you've got friends there, and if that person has not ever experienced that, of course it would not be meaningful anyway. So you need to know the person well, and then think if this story is suitable for them or not.
Okay,
and consider some modifications. That was a good question, and I don't want to end the session before we go over or without going over this question from Nur Hatice. Maybe Nur Hatice already asked this question verbally, but she asks, I think we can change the end of the stories and tell if there is a problem. So those unexpected endings or not so happy endings, should we modify? Like, we really found the material that we really need, the right story, but it doesn't have that happy ending, or it doesn't have, it's not, that tension is too over for the age group that we consider? What should we do? Like what kind of modifications, or what are your suggestions on that?
For example, very interestingly, on special days, they, for example, tell stories about, let's say, quitting smoking or not drinking alcohol. Okay, they do presentations and they tell stories about these to primary school students. But very interestingly, if the student does not have a problem with that topic, you know, as I mentioned during the session, don't make them think of purple elephants. So if they have not a prior experience, if they don't have a problem with that, why do you make it a problem for them? And sometimes it can be too early. For example, if you've got a class full of students who do not have any first day anxiety, then don't read the story because it's not suitable for them anyway. But if you've got more than, let's say, out of 10, you've got 7 students who have first day anxiety, yes, then you can read it because then it will help. But if it's not real for them, if it's not the case, if it's not a problem, if it's not an issue, then don't even go into that topic. That's what I always recommend. But if it's an issue, then yes, you can help with their thinking process and come up with a nice solution. Let's say you've got a student who's extremely worried about coming to school, leaving mummy and daddy, then you can read it and then he would think, oh, yes, I have friends and everybody likes me here and I learn a lot of things, and then they would decrease the tension. So it actually depends on your students, knowing them well. You can change the ending, you can change the climax, you can change the characters. Let's say if they're afraid of spiders and the character is a spider, change it into a lovey-dovey teddy bear, and then they would listen to you with a soft feeling instead of being scared of the spider. So the trick lies in knowing your students, what they need, what problem they're facing, and individually. Individual students have different needs. So when you look at the classroom as a total, as a whole, they will guide you anyway in the right direction.
Thank you for this wonderful explanation to the question. Any additional questions or comments from our lovely audience today? We're getting close to the end of our session then. Well, thank you so much, Liz Hocam, for your, for your time, for being with us. And she's thanking us as well. It was wonderful to listen to you. And I happened to listen to you twice today, but in the second time, I also learned new things. I noticed that some of the points that you made, probably that you laid out, I missed them because maybe I was just distracted by other things. So I made notes. So I really, truly enjoyed both of the sessions with you. And we would love to have you over more often if you have time, and if we could find a common sort of point that we could connect again. So stories helped us connect together. And it was a very lovely and very meaningful communication and connection. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Hocam. And actually, I would love to hear you all reading stories.
Yeah, they don't know. So you gave me news. So my students, we have been receiving some training. They attended webinars. We had a lovely guest speaker today. I've been talking about, as Hocam mentioned, I've been talking about stories, storybooks, storytelling, all the details, probably too much detail that they, they're already and my points about stories. So all of this is for actually preparing my students for an upcoming project, which is story-based language methodology, implementation, designing and implementation. So Hocam was referring to that project that is upcoming. It's no, brand new information for you. We already knew that from the first day on, this semester. So I will be I will actually post the detailed instructions for that, and you will review it. You will, sort of digest all of this information, and we will see each other on Wednesday, and you will shoot me your questions on that. And Oya Hocam kindly accepts to be, I don't want to call her a reviewer, but she kindly accepted to go over, watch your, less storybook readings, because one component of that project is you folks reading stories to an intended, a hypothetical group of young learners, very young ones or older young ones. It's up to you, your decision, your call. But once those recordings are ready, she would love to see you reading to your students as well. If you allow me, to share your recordings, obviously.
Of course, Hocam, I would love to hear you reading. And I mean, if you want me to, as a third person, meta position person, I would be more than happy to say, or as
share
constructive
your feedback.
Yes, yeah. Just, talk. I mean, nothing to be scared of, but, just as a friendly thing. But I would love to hear you reading, even if you don't want me to give feedback.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for this lovely session, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
Wow.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
You
See
too.
you.
Bye-bye.
Very much, Oya Hocam, and thank you very much to you, Melike Hocam, for that nice opportunity for us. Thank you.
It was a pleasure
you,
to have
Hocam.
you over, Suhendan Hocam,
Thank
Yasemin
you.
Hocam. I'm more than happy to have you over today.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz Hocam, once again for your time.
Thank you.
And I'll see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.